Hello, Night Owls, and welcome again to my channel. Appreciate you playing this video. This is another episode of My Two Cents. That is to say, this is my opinion on a subject that everybody seems to be talking about, and the value of that depends mostly on you, really. I will admit that this conversation usually puts me in a really bad mood. But more than anything, actually, lately, it's made me sad for very obvious reasons. And yeah, my battery is just on low now. One reason is because the entertainment that's coming out now is, at least in the media, trying to be lauded as good quality entertainment, and it is not. It's lousy. From overly agenda pushing SJW, feminist, and other area nonsense to honestly just really bad writing. Just really basic bad writing. On top of that, they're taking long established franchises and killing them. And I do mean killing them. They've destroyed them to the point where they're unenjoyable sometimes to even try to go back to before, that you have to really just pretend that what you're looking at doesn't actually exist anymore. And like in the case of Terminator here, that it stopped, if not after the fourth one, then possibly after the second one. In all that, I am trying to be more patient. Some films are and shows again have absolutely ruined great franchises. And I want to be clear, this is not necessarily an insult to the actors and especially actresses, because that's what I'm going to talk about the most, is because there's this weird viewpoint that misogyny is the problem with Hollywood today. And I will throw you a bone here. I'm sure misogyny exists in areas that makes life difficult, but here's a brutal fact. Life is hard for everybody. In some way, life is hard for pretty much everybody. So let me say, at least from my perspective, the Star Wars sequels were horrible. I didn't mind Force Awakens totally. But yeah, with The Last Jedi, they drove it right into the ground so much that Rise could never fix it. That is not a shot at Daisy Ridley. She was lovely. She has she has great screen presence. And I really enjoyed her performance. So much so that it bothers me that they didn't give her a better role. She would have been a fantastic actress to take on a part that actually had depth and meaning to it. But that is what it is. Other ones that come down the pipe should have been much better than they were, and instead they crank out a mediocre film that's an insult really to everybody that's watching it. And that's the main thing, is it's an insult to the women that they claim these movies are for, while telling men that it's not for them, and then getting mad at them when they don't watch it. One of the biggest victims in all of this has been the Bond franchise. Aside from my personal stakes in not being very good lately anyways, the new one is yet another attempt to absolutely kill an established franchise. I won't do a review of it because I will not be watching it. I've seen the trailers and I don't subject myself to utter garbage. And that brings us to Black Widow as the latest example, that you have this, what could have been a great movie. Believe me, most of the fans that started with the first Iron Man movie, which no, Black Widow wasn't in that, but from Iron Man 1, we were wondering what are going to be the options in the Marvel Universe. And by the time Iron Man 2 came out, a lot of people were interested in a Black Widow movie. It is not the fans, specifically your straight male fans, that have caused this problem. It's the studio, and the latest version just atrocious. Because, and one of the things I'm going to go over is the lack. Black Widow pales in comparison to actual female power entertainment that has existed, that your group has either ignored or been flat out taught doesn't exist. But when they have to turn male characters opposite female characters into bumbling moron jokes, or they take an established male character and gender swap it for no reason at all except for to subvert expectations, they've ruined not just this movie but future movies with the Taskmaster. See, now you have two options: bring in the real Taskmaster and make a comment, have a multiverse where in a different version he's the real Taskmaster, but ultimately you've ruined a great character, one that we should have seen multiple times. And the only reason I laugh is so I don't cry. And this goes into movies I've even enjoyed, like Deadpool 2. Domino is not a black woman. Domino is a white woman. And there was no need to race swap her. Especially because if you wanted a black character in this movie, instead of Cable, you get Bishop. Bishop is also from the future. Bishop is a black man. You use him instead. There's your black character. No race swapping necessary. You keep Domino the way she's supposed to be. No problem. And you have an even better film. I will admit, though, I really enjoyed Deadpool 2, and I thought the actress that played Domino did a darn good job. There just was no reason to change it because there are a plethora of different races, and the genders, male and female, have plenty. This picture here is a scratch on the surface of all the female characters that are available to them to use and have been written really well for decades that they don't need to ruin with modern day feminist SJW nonsense propaganda. So let's sit down. Let's watch a few. Before we get to it, though, I am going to address the things that I'm not going to, well, accept an argument or conversation about. One of them is the male gaze. If you use terms like toxic masculinity, male gaze, Latinx, and I can't keep up with all gender normativity or whatever other nonsense that they've created in the last few years, I cannot take you seriously. You are full of buzzwords that mean nothing. You don't have an opinion that's actually your own. I can't respect it, and I won't have anything to do with it. So I'll just clear that out of the way right now. One of the points I'm going to make is in action movies specifically, because that's what we're going to address, because that seems to be the big argument, is whether men appreciate female action heroes, whether they've ever existed since before 2015's Ghostbusters or 2019's Charlie's Angels, because that's honestly what you people sound like. If the men in these action movies can be in different variations of dress and undress, there's absolutely no reason why the women can't. Why you have to complain about what your hero is wearing. And the outfits, they vary as much as the movies do, and the movies vary greatly. And it's a fantastic thing. Some wear very little, some wear quite a bit, and some are fully covered head to toe. And that's fantastic. I don't prefer one over the other, really. But I do get irritated with the conversation about whether it's acceptable or not. And let me be clear. If you are okay with a woman curb stomping someone's teeth out and blowing holes in their lungs with a .45 Magnum, but you freak out because she showed some cleavage, your moral compass is skewed and you need to do some self-evaluation, like really bad. Because let's have a serious conversation about that. If you don't think that a woman should show any cleavage or any thigh in her movies, that's true. I cannot actually tell you that's wrong. I think you're making a mountain out of a molehill. But ultimately, most of what's in any movie shouldn't exist, whether it's foul language, whether it's immodesty, whether it's the violence itself. So, what is your point? Your point, it has no point, especially because you only complain about this with women. You do not complain about it with men. And that's why I won't have the conversation, because you don't make any sense, especially when there's large drives behind the Free the Nipple campaign and stop sexualizing women, stop objectifying women. And you don't even understand how often men do not sexualize or objectify women. Finding a woman beautiful can be the beginning and end of a thought. That's not objectifying her. It's not sexualizing her. And again, you don't make that same argument for men, which makes you a hypocrite, which makes it impossible to take you serious. One of the best examples is Birds of Prey. All in all, an atrocious film. Some solid characters that were not given just representation on screen. Horrible representations of them, really. You had the original Harley Quinn from Suicide Squad, and everybody hollered about her booty shorts. And again, if that's your opinion that you think she should be more covered, I'm not mad at you for that. That is your opinion, and it's not entirely wrong. What was wrong was when Birds of Prey, a far inferior film, came out, and somehow you still have her in these tiny shorts, occasionally in that horrible yellow garbage bag jumpsuit, and running around essentially topless except for a sports bra, and then you have the audacity to talk about the male gaze. Like a woman in her bra is somehow going to catch the male gaze less than a girl in her booty shorts. It was, again, hypocritical. It made no sense, had no foundation. And that's what's frustrating so many people. Whether they agree with you or not about modesty, your argument is empty. And what you have is the new Suicide Squad, which honestly looks pretty lousy. But there you go. There's her outfit. That's perfect. It's modest, covers her shoulder to ankle, but it's authentic. It's from the comics. It represents her. It's red and black like it's supposed to be. It is dang near the perfect outfit. Better than either of the other two, or multiple outfits she wore in Birds of Prey. That is what Harley Quinn should look like. And who did it? A man. A man sat down and said, this is the perfect outfit for a comic. I don't have a lot of respect for James Gunn, but you have to admit he nailed it with that costume. That is ideal. Mostly, I was going to start this with a lot of yelling, a lot of sarcasm, a lot of irritants, but I actually want to have a serious conversation. Me and you. I'll use your lingo. Karen and allies. Sit down. Let's have a talk. Let's have a serious talk about female action heroes and females representation in movies altogether. No, I'm not going to mansplain it. And again, if that's a term you use, then you've already lost the argument, because you're just full of buzzwords and you're ignoring any conversation that doesn't agree with you. And I will admit I agree with some points. But I would like you to really look at this video, as long as it is, and get the point that I'm making to you. You've been told that there's been no female representation in movies, that it's just something that happened. Women were always damsels in distress. They never held their own. They were weak. I don't know, I had a better one when this was going to be sarcasm. All right, I'm sorry. It's not going to pause my... I've done something wrong, and now I can't pause my recorder. Anyways, women have, even in the science fiction realm, they weren't ignored. They've existed since the cinema has existed. And they existed before that in books and novels and other stories. Science fiction has them. Now, I will admit, again, I'm willing to meet you on certain conversations. In a lot, they were supporting characters. but they were also largely prominent in their own films as well. And some of them even being genre standing films, where they genre defining films that to this day remain considered classics. And you'd think that even areas like the Western, maybe you have your musicals, which there's still nothing wrong with, or your comedies, which again, still nothing wrong with. But yeah, there were women that stood their ground, that have from 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. Yes, there were women that were ruling the screen. And it's an offense really to them to say and preach otherwise. Also, representation. Asians, blacks. Was there a lot of them? No. Did they get whitewashed? Sometimes. Were they not represented at all? Wrong. They were. They were in many a film. You just don't know it because you don't look past anything more than 5 years old. And because it's been drilled into your head, this nonsense, you won't go back there. I like to address this movie specifically, Jackie Brown, because Quentin Tarantino was such a huge fan of these, what were called exploitation and blaxploitation movies at the time. Because no, again, I'll admit, they were not prominent, but they were there. They existed. There were people trying to get that stuff made. And it's an insult to everybody involved and to the people's intelligence today to say otherwise. And because Quentin Tarantino was such a huge fan of that, he's made some serious classics today. And one of them is Jackie Brown, where he got Pam Grier, who he was a huge fan of. It's the kind of thing I would have done had I made movies. There were a number of actors and actresses I would have loved to have worked with. And he did it. And not only did he just not stick her in a cameo role, this movie starred her. And a movie hadn't starred Pam Grier in quite some time. And it's a phenomenal film. And she does a phenomenal job. And most of you that complain about the backlash against Ghostbusters and Charlie's Angels and Captain Marvel probably have no idea about this movie. Go rent it. Or do yourself a favor, go buy it and sit down and watch it. It's fantastic. We'll also have to ignore movies like Gone with the Wind. I got the chance to watch that a couple of years ago in the theater again, which was a fantastic opportunity. I didn't realize how long until Clark Gable actually came into the movie. This is Vivien Leigh's film, and this is considered one of the greatest films of all time. Again, no, it's not an action film, and so it's not exactly what we're talking about. But to pretend that women were overlooked, neglected, and ignored, and that films weren't built entirely on them is incorrect. And that goes so far as to also say Wizard of Oz. Wizard of Oz, yeah, 3 men. Cowardly Lion, Tin Man, and Scarecrow. Do any of them star in this movie? No. And not even the wizard is the one who helps her at the end. This is Dorothy's story. A young lady is the star of this whole story. She's the one that makes everything happen. And she does get some assistance. And that's all well and good. But it's her helping everybody around her. And it's her helping herself. And it's her rising above all the complications that come her way. And again, you know this is considered one of the greatest films ever made. I disagree a little bit. Did not love every song. I would have liked something a little bit more accurate to the novel. I would still like them to not remake the movie, but make the book into a movie that's doesn't have the songs, that has a little bit more of the action that was in there. But overall, but that's neither here nor there. This movie exists. It's existed for decades. It's considered required watching for anybody that considers themselves a movie fan. You have the romance genre, which I know that there's some complaints. Why should women only be relegated to women that need a man? That's not the story to a lot of romance stories. You're not paying attention. Pretty Woman was about Richard Gere and how this woman changed his life. And I hate to break the news to you, man-hating feminists, but the one thing that has always been true and will always be true is men need women and women need men. That is basic biology. That is how the human race was created. Yes, I'll go there. And it is how they've continued to exist. Even if you believe in evolution, the evolutionary chain has existed by men and women finding each other. And the best civilizations have existed by them being a unit, a cohesive unit. And that's what the best romance movies do. This movie isn't about Julia Roberts fawning over Richard Gere and just, oh, I hope he takes me to the prom. No, this was about Richard Gere's character and everything that he already had in his life and how she was so much more. The romance genre should not be overlooked by men, and it shouldn't be sneered at by women. It's an excellent genre when they do it right, which they don't always do it right, that's for sure. There's a lot of crappy romance out there. I will get back to action, but I want to start with something like this. When you insist that you need more women wielding guns and breaking spines, you neglect movies where women use their brains. Women are very good deductive thinkers and reasoners, and some great movies out there where they are the star. They carry the movie. It's their film, and it's all about them staying one step ahead and them being intelligent people. And you're overlooking all these actresses: Bette Davis, Rita Hayworth, Katharine Hepburn. And if I had my IMDb in front of me, I could go on and on. Pam Grier, which again, representation there and diversity, phenomenal. And you disrespect all of them. Raquel Welch and Carolyn Monroe. Let's see, Bo Derek would be another one. Anne Margaret, Farrah Fawcett. These actresses were making and starring in groundbreaking TV shows and movies since before a lot of you were even born. And you dismiss it because you don't know what you're talking about. And it's very frustrating. And that's, again, what we're going to get to, and hopefully you're going to see the point is, there's nothing wrong with more women action films, more strong women, more women carrying a film. And I'm not going to talk to you about equal pay because that's a whole nother video and nonsense that goes there. Sometimes an actress has been underpaid. Sometimes an actor has been underpaid. And sometimes different people bring different crowds to the movie, and they get paid more because that's who they're coming to see. That's just a fact. And if you are someone who sees somebody like Bo Derek and Ursula Andress here in their bikini or whatever, and so you immediately dismiss them, well, this is just eye candy. This is male gaze. This is whatever. You're the one undermining these women, not men. You're undermining them. You're undermining their strengths. You're undermining their characters. You're undermining the script. That's you. That is you hating women. I have never seen more internalized misogyny than in feminists and at the SJW crowd and their allies. Your straight white men, there's some horrible ones out there. Again, I'll give you that. But in general, they love women and they like them to be strong and they like them to be their partners. They, just because they find a woman attractive and just because an attractive woman does hold their attention more, this is not necessarily a negative thing. You just want it to be a negative thing. And it's not. So that is your own undoing of it. And I just decided to throw a few more movies in here to make my point. Cynthia Rothrock, back in the 80s, possibly even the 70s, frankly. She, as you can see here, she can do both very well. In fact, she was making action movies, again, long before a lot of you were born, or roughly around the time you were born, maybe some of you, but most of you probably before you were born. She is an actual championship, black belt, other things. I didn't look up everything I did before when I was talking to somebody else about this. I didn't write it down. She's real deal. She is a real martial artist, and she's fantastic, and she made a great deal of movies. Most of them, I don't believe, went to theater. I don't remember seeing a lot of them go to theater, but I didn't go to theater a whole lot as a young person. Um, but I'd rent her stuff on DVD and I'd watch them. And this is why it's not that we don't want women action movies. It's that, one, we want them to be good, go figure. And two, us older members of the audience are tired of the ignorance, the willful ignorance that these haven't existed for decades. Again, all the way back to the 20s and the 30s. Noir, which I showed you several pictures of. But I'm going to pick up in the 80s because I honestly don't think most people are going to go past the 80s. And you're missing a lot of stuff, 70s, 60s, and even I don't love a lot of stuff in the 40s and the 30s and 20s, but they all have really good movies. But picking up with the 70s and definitely into the 80s and 90s, you don't have a leg to stand on when you discuss the lack of representation of women. Cynthia Rothrock, Michelle Kahn, who you also know as Michelle Yeoh, Maggie Chung, and even when they star in a movie with a guy, sure, that's Jet Li's film, but for her to stand toe-to-toe with Jet Li, Jackie Chan, she has to be good, and she is. And finally, her and Cynthia Rothrock even teamed up for a movie. It goes by a lot of titles. Ultra Force is one of them. Yes, Madame is another one. That was a great movie. Not the best plot in the world, but it's an action movie. It doesn't necessarily have to. But you want to see two women kicking butt and taking names, that's your movie right there. And it's infinitely better than Charlie's Angels and some of this other crap that's coming out. I highly recommend it. Kathleen Turner was a great one in the 80s. Jamie Lee Curtis, you can't ignore her. She is one of the standouts in the genre. Now, what a lot of people do like to dismiss are actresses like Shannon Tweed. I forget another actress's name just now. That's unfortunate. Julie Strain. Shannon Worry, that's who I was thinking of. Because, yeah, there was usually nudity in their movies. And so they go, well, that doesn't count. Because it just... But... especially nowadays, you can find naked women across the internet and in hundreds of movies. That doesn't get anybody to a movie. Not nobody. You're dismissing a movie for no reason at all. Now, I will throw you one here, too. I don't particularly like sex scenes in my movies. They make me a little bit uncomfortable, especially if I'm watching with other people. I've never seen them really push the story. They add very, very little most of the time. You can probably pick out an example or two where you're like, hey, that was necessary. But most of the time, it's not. But a little flash of skin in a movie, I don't really see the problem with. I don't. And Shannon Tweed should not be undermined for being one of the best early action stars that were women, just because in half of her movies, and I do say half because I'm not 100% sure about that one, but No Contest, she has no nudity in this movie. There's no nudity at all. Not just no sexing, but no nudity. And she's bumped a little bit to the back there, which is a shame because it's her film. And this is a fun film. Andrew Dice Clay plays the villain. Robert Davi is the police officer that's trying to get the situation under control. And then not even on the cover is the great Rowdy Roddy Piper. He's in this. This is a fun film. Again, B grade, cheesy. It's actually a female Die Hard. You can kind of see the tower in Dice Clay's shadow there. And she's stuck inside because they were having a modeling contest. And he took it over, and now they're trying to get in, and he's trying to keep everybody out. And the only person that can keep everybody safe is Shannon Tweed. And they even threw in a good sneaking through the vent scene. But let me tell you something. It's realistic. So, what I appreciate about that movie is the realism. And I'm not picking on Shannon Tweed, but she's a tiny woman. And her trying to fight a group of terrorists is in and of itself slightly ridiculous. But she holds her own in a fairly realistic for an action movie kind of way. And she doesn't want to do it. She's a nobody. She's not a ex-cop. She's not a military person. She's just somebody who's caught and feels she has to do the right thing. And she doesn't. She's scared most of the time. And it's wonderful. And you go, oh, sure, she has to be scared. But a man isn't. Did you not watch the original Die Hard? McClane didn't want to do that either. He kept trying to get the cops to come and handle it for him. He didn't want to do it either. It happens a lot, and you dismiss everything that doesn't fit your narrative. So please stop doing that. Pay attention, and you'll enjoy good movies better. You'll dislike these crap movies that are being made, and it'll be a better time for everybody. Tracy Lords was another one. Solid actress. And these actresses are still working today. Michelle Pfeiffer and Michelle Yeoh. You ignore their early work. There were shows as far back as the 70s. Policewoman. And I use that one to show you that it had several seasons. Charlie's Angels was a groundbreaking show. Then there were superheroes. Women were represented in superheroes. And no, it wasn't her show. It was Batman's show. But Julie Newmar and really even Eartha Kitt, they've gone down in history. They're remembered for their performances. And then they had their own shows, such as Wonder Woman. And we can't get into cartoons. I can't get into every single one that was made. Science fiction, which really caveman movies are. Fantasy, I guess. If not science fiction, they're still fantasy. Raquel Welch. This is a genre-defining movie. One of the best that you just ignore with your agenda. Watch old shows like The Twilight Zone. And I do mean the old one, not that new crap that was made. The old one. There's phenomenal stories in there, just in general, just good writing. Try to enjoy something that doesn't fit whatever box you have put yourself in. Try to enjoy something that has other people's boxes in it. But also, there is a lot of good episodes and good women characters and diversity characters. But this video is not so much about diversity. It's strictly really about where women stand in the entertainment industry and where men stand with them being in the industry. Logan's Run. Great film, named after Logan. But the woman that joins him, and that's a shame I just forgot her name, so just watched this movie. But there she is on the cover. One of the best sci-fi films ever made. I believe there was a TV show, the novels, there's I think 3 novels. Great story, and they turned it into a great movie. And you should watch that one to educate yourself on stuff that existed. You got the Buck Rogers series. You have Doctor Who. And I don't know what's on TV now, but I know it ain't Doctor Who. Whatever that garbage is that they are puking onto the set with the label Doctor Who under it is not Doctor Who. That was Doctor Who. The reboot was Doctor Who. But Doctor Who existed way back in the black and white days, and they were known for their sidekicks, many of whom were female. One specifically was Sarah Jane, who was so famous she came back in the rebooted series, and that was after she had her own series that was a spin-off that she did for a while. So don't undermine a supporting character just because you think everybody should always be female to star in everything. Undermining the supporting characters to undermine everything. It's a foolish narrative that anyone, male or female, can be led into to think that they don't need anybody else, that supporting someone else is somehow makes you less than the person that you're trying to support. Battlestar Galactica, obviously they gender swapped that character, and yet Katie Sackhoff was amazing. Nobody really cared. And we still had the original. That was one of the few times it actually worked. And one of the reasons it worked, as Katie said herself, because they didn't make a big deal out of it. They didn't announce, we're making him a female as a female because the future is female and all things are female and everything's female. No, they just made the show. And she just was who she was, a really well-written character. And that was the beginning and that was the end of it. And there was very little feedback against it. And you're always going to have a little bit. I can't get rid of every single raving lunatic that hates anything female. The truly misogynist people out there and the misandrist, they're going to be there for the time being. And there's nothing can be done about that. But if you think they're the majority, you are incorrect. You are simply wrong. You know, I can't go on all these series. There's the Stargate series. There's Dollhouse, and I think she had another show too. Farscape, which had several strong female characters in it, including the wonderful Claudia Black. Firefly, was another terrific show. You had Inara, who was beautiful, and she had an interesting career, but she wasn't afraid to stand her ground, whether it was against dangers or the captain himself. And yet it was well written that when she overstepped, she took the backlash. She accepted the backlash and backed off because she was a well-written character. And not every single thing that comes out of any character's mouth, male or female, is always right. And if you can't have a character put your hero or anybody else in their place, as they did with the men in this show, we're just not getting into that because that's not what this video is about, then you haven't written a very well show if that doesn't happen. And the fact that she could take a step back and say, okay, I've overstepped, was one of the things that did make her a great character. You also had Zoe, who was an ex-soldier with Captain Mal. That was a strong, wonderful woman. And again, just like in the Fast and Furious franchise, which I talk about with Letty and Dom, Zoe loves her husband. She loves her husband very much. And in this show, that is brought out as a feminine strength. It is not treated as a feminist weakness. And I love that. I hope you didn't hear that horrible sound on my computer. I won't know till I play this back. If so, I'm sorry. I apologize for that. You, of course, have River. River, who was everything. I mean, she had the brains. She was a marksman. She was a martial artist. She was an unstoppable weapon, just about. You can't say that that wasn't a strong character. But they weren't all cookie cutouts. Katie was strong because she was a mechanic. She was a woman who could work on machines. She kept the ship flying. But she was an innocent, and she was a sweet character. You don't have to make a character cold and hard and uncaring in order for them to be a strong character. In fact, if anything, it makes them less likable all around. It simply does. And none of these characters would you call weak. Yet they were all fantastic. They were all strong. And they were all heart. Star Trek, the original series, still the best. Again, I don't know what Discovery and Picard are supposed to be. There's that cartoon one out also, the Below Decks. That one I don't care that much about because it's just a cartoon. It's pretty goofy. But Discovery and Picard have all but driven Star Trek right into the ground. And I will say, if you're a fan, I'm sorry about that. I am. I know everybody has their opinion. Everybody's allowed to like something. But no, those shows are garbage. And if you like them, I am sorry about your taste because it's not very good. And yeah, if you even listen this far, probably shut it off there. But that's just how it is. The original Star Trek is the best of all of them. It remains the best. And it had women, the whole Star Trek series did, from Uhura, and who could often be, especially for people who haven't watched the show, she could be underestimated. You had the characters from Next Generation. You've got Janeway. You've got half Klingon. Here's just a grip of them. Just, if you really think that Star Wars, Rey Skywalker was the first strong female in sci-fi, nobody can take your opinion seriously. And this goes back again to what we were talking about with male gaze and outfits and modesty and all this. You talk about how women shouldn't be forced to have modesty, but anytime a woman shows any kind of skin, you scream misogyny and male gaze and nonsense. And because Princess Leia shows up in a metal bikini in Return of the Jedi, you forget everything about her, from A New Hope to Empire Strikes Back to the rest of Return of the Jedi. You forget everything she accomplished and you dismiss her because of a scene that actually was a very powerful scene, especially how she ended her captor, who pretty much half the known galaxy was afraid of, or at least intimidated by, Jabba. But she ends up ending his life and freeing herself. Nobody rescued her. She did it herself. And she got captured trying to save the man she loves. That's a great piece of story, and I don't understand why it always has to be hated. And you'll understand why Cara Dune is our new Star Wars heroine. Because she's written better than Rey. or anybody else in those god-awful sequels. And I don't know. That's it. Just, she's who we look to now. And we're glad to have her, and hopefully she'll be back. You have to understand that men do not, for the large part, do not want to hold women back. We want to cheer you on. And a lot of you going, we don't need you to cheer us on. All right, fine. But don't get mad when we don't then. Don't get mad when they don't cheer you on. Don't say, this movie's not for you, and then go, why didn't men come see it? Because they hate us. Don't talk about how you need allies and how men need to support women, and then yell about how you don't need their support because you're strong, independent women. Pick a lane. Make up your mind. You need to know what it is you actually want, and you need to know why. And you need to understand that men very much like to support women. Very much. And so here we go with Julie Strain. Pamela Anderson is Barbed Wire. I talk about that movie a lot because I'm sorry, I'll take Barbed Wire over your Black Widow and Captain Marvel any day. I was never a huge fan of Captain Marvel anyways. I loved Black Widow and I love Scarlett Johansson, and that movie should have been fantastic. It should have set a mark instead of being a mediocre yawn fest with a bunch of nonsense and bullcrap agenda in it. And so, yeah, here we go. I'm just going to throw out a whole bunch of action scenes right now to show you what's been going on for the last 40 years. 70s, 80s, 90s, today, you've got your women action heroes, and and these are all successful. Anyway, I think they're pretty much all successful. You got your whole Resident Evil series. You got your Underworld series. Both of those have several movies in them that actually star women. Fast and Furious has strong supporting women, but those two series have strong women. These movies have all been successful. So maybe, just maybe, when a movie as bad as Charlie's Angels comes out and the audience goes, that is crap, maybe don't scream misogyny. Maybe ask yourself, why this one and not all these other very successful ones, these other well-made, entertaining ones? What's the point? And I also want to throw in some diversity here. You got the Salma Hayek, Michelle Yeoh, Maggie Q. You got women showing a little bit of skin. You got women showing no skin. You've got variety across the board. What I also want to say is, if you can't handle your female hero looking like this at some point in the movie, then you really shouldn't have female action heroes, because that's what happens. If you're going to run through the jungle, break through glass, shoot guns, fight with knives, your character needs to get beat up, just like Charlize Theron did in Atomic Blonde, just like Gina Davis did in The Long Kiss Goodnight. If you watch those movies and it's not about wincing when somebody gets hit. I do that sometimes watching men action movies. I'm like, oh, if that was real, that would have hurt. That would have been bad. But you have this whole women need to be protected, but they also need to be the hero. Nobody protects the hero. The hero protects the hero, and the hero takes damage protecting the hero. The hero is out there by himself, and so in that case, by herself, standing on her own 2 feet, taking the damage herself. And for the record, I really don't have that much complaint when stuff is kind of fake. For one, I love Sucker Punch. I did. I thought that movie was fantastic. I had no problems with it, really. I didn't have a problem with Atomic Blonde. It wasn't my favorite, a little dry, but I appreciated the realism, and I liked that she used weapons a lot. I do like when women use weapons. I watched Fast 9. I loved Fast 9, but the women used a lot of weapons in that too. Mia used pans and knives and stuff like that to beat the crap out of somebody. And I don't care how small you are. If she hits you with a frying pan, you're going to feel it. When women fight men their size and then tip the balance in their favor with some brass knuckles or a pan or whatever, a stick, whatever, I don't care. I'm all in it. It's when a woman that clearly weighs 90 pounds tries taking down a 245 pound man that's pure muscle, that it's a little hard to accept. And sometimes it's done well, and I actually roll with it, but a lot of times it's not. Um, if Charlie's Angels had been any good, I still would have had trouble with Kristen Stewart beating somebody up. I don't even think she weighs 100 pounds. There's just a reality to it. But when Gina Carano does it, also knowing that she was an actual MMA fighter and having seen how much her punches and kicks, the pounds per inch that she delivers, I roll with it a lot more. Is it 100% realistic? I don't know, and I don't care, because movies aren't supposed to be realistic. Anyways, this is going on a long time. Let me keep going, okay? We think that's awesome. We think it's awesome. Now I'm going to start off right here. These are what are called more exploitation movies. That's not the same as pornography or softcore, any nonsense like that. They're just B-grade action movies where the women show a little bit of skin, everybody delivers really bad lines, lots of guns are fired, lots of explosions happen. My point is that these have existed. And if you don't like them, that's okay. Sometimes I have said in this that your opinions are wrong, and sometimes opinions can be wrong. And sometimes people get confused about what an opinion actually is. All right, so you don't like them, that's fine. You don't want it in your movie, that's also fine. I can appreciate that. The point of this, though, is that those action movies have existed, and the women were lethal. They were action films, and they were lethal, and they held their own against all the bad guys. And as we progressed, you'll see that they kept getting better. Shadow Warriors, B-grade fun. Shannon Tweed and Hulk Hogan, Carl Weathers. Angel of Death, Zoe Bell. That's one of the things I wanted to address. She got started as a stunt woman. So why did Taskmaster have to be a man? There are women stunt people out there. She could have been, Zoe Bell could have been Taskmaster for as little as they did with the voice, no talking or anything else. You could have had a stunt person, which they did. You could have had a female be there the whole time, and it would not have undermined your whole women are powerful, but we're going to have a man play this female character the entire movie until she takes off her mask. Bounty Hunters, B-grade. And as a fan of movies, I have often had to look to B-grade films, direct to DVD, now sometimes streaming, to locate what I wanted to find in whatever genre. That's where most fantasy and science fiction would wind up, because they just didn't feel like they'd make money at the theater. So just because you have to go direct DVD sometimes to find what you want doesn't make it less. Bounty Hunters with Trish Stratus, an ex-WWE wrestler who's fantastic. That movie's not that good, though. It's a little boring, I have to admit. Mercenaries, brought back. Again, you got Zoe Bell, Bridget Nielsen, Cynthia Rothrock from the 80s. They went and got her, which was fantastic. She actually was a last-minute fill-in. Christina Loken, who's in several other franchises. Gina Carano has been making great B-grade female action-led movies. Just really enjoyable, really well done. DOA, little cheesy. Deb's very cheesy, very funny. That one I might give you the whole male gaze thing on. I mean, it's pretty much in-your-face tease kind of film, but it's a lot of fun. You got Haley Steinfeld. I'm really looking forward to her as a female Hawkeye, to be honest. If they just do it as a natural, progressive story, it'll be great. If they do it as a female empowerment nonsense crap, then it's going to break my heart, because I like Clint Howard, Clint whatever, Hawkeye. And I like Jeremy Renner, and I like Haley Steinfeld, and I would really like that series to be good. There's no reason for me to believe it will be, because everything Disney has done lately has been terrible. Okay, not terrible. Most of it's been terrible. Some of it's just been bad. And I have high hopes for this one. I really do. But she's great. Barely Lethal is a funny movie. Term Life is a good one with her and a dad. And he actually is a solid male character in it. The Mission Impossible series, that largely stars Tom Cruise. But the supporting cast of females that are in these movies are all well-written, tough, and solid. And then we go to Charlie's Angels. That was a successful TV series. They made 2 very successful movies that were a lot of fun, very tongue-in-cheek. And that's the other thing. When you just go for fun, it's easier to accept, I forgot her name. I just was looking at it. Cameron Diaz. It's easier to accept Cameron Diaz beating the crap out of a big villain, because these movies are already lighthearted, tongue-in-cheek. If you go serious and you want it to be realistic, that's where you lose an audience, and you have to make a reason for why she can hold her own, like giving her brass knuckles or something like that. And of course, Lucy Liu is always fantastic. You gotta love Lucy Liu. So again, maybe when you make a Charlie's Angels movie and everybody goes, that is garbage, don't yell misogyny. Ask yourself why. There were 2 popular movies. There was a very popular series. So obviously there was a very built-in male audience. There must be an actual reason why this movie failed. And you know why it failed. You don't want to admit it, but you know why it failed. Underworld is a great example that's often used. I've seen it in several videos, as well as Resident Evil. Female-led movies. Series. Franchises, in fact. You got Sucker Punch, which I know there's not a lot of fans, or at least I hear a lot of hate for that movie. I like it. I liked it a lot. Good emotion, good action. Jumped a lot of genres in the fantasy elements, which I love. Everly came out. I had high hopes for Everly. I really did, because Salma Hayek is one of my favorites. Ever since Desperado, I have just loved Salma Hayek. I felt shortchanged when Once Upon a Time in Mexico came out, and they pretty much wrote her out of it. I don't know if she was busy, she just didn't want to do it. I don't really remember what happened. I think she was busy with something else, and so they filmed without her, and they just wrote her out of it. And I was disappointed. Wild Wild West and Banditas, neither of those are real great. And so when Everly came out, I was like, all right, Salma Hayek, action movie, let's do this. It's not bad. It's not a bad film, but for me, it was too rough for me. Too dark, too uncomfortable for me to really enjoy. But man, if she did another one, and I don't mean Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard, that was pretty lousy. But if she ever does another one, I'll be there. I'll be there, and so will a lot of men, because the misogyny thing you want to protest against bad movies doesn't exist when the movie is good. So I hope she does more. I hope she does a lot more, because she's fantastic. That's a beautiful picture. Colombiana, great film. The Real McCoy, why I put this one on here, even though it's a little less action, is because I also wanted to get into this whole thing. Men don't have to be as strong as the women in these movies. They don't have to be. That's not a necessity. Nobody is saying, well, if you have a strong woman, the man better be just as strong. No. He just needs to not be a moron. Why is she asking for help or accepting any help from a man who can't tie his shoes? That's the insult. And I will dive into that more here in a few. But The Real McCoy is a great movie with Kim Basinger. And it has the fantastic Val Kilmer. She is a world-class thief. He's kind of a average Joe. And it's great, because he's not a moron. He's not on her level by any means, and that's fine. Not every man is on the same level as every woman. Many women are above men on many levels. And that's fine to represent in a movie if you do it well. I highly recommend this film. And that goes for, even more so, The Long Kiss Goodnight. This was the movie that I thought would kickstart action movies for women into high gear. Again, when this movie came out, I'd already been watching these movies for 20 years. So I didn't 100% full of hype, but this movie was so flawless that I really thought, okay, we're going to get more now. And we didn't. And you have women to blame for that more than men, because men enjoy the movies, at least for different periods of time. They were the main ticket buyers. They were the main ones going. And I have yet to hear one man who didn't enjoy this movie. I'm sure there are, obviously. There's always a group of somebody who doesn't like something. But this was another great one. And she is a world-class assassin. And Samuel L. Jackson is just a bail-jumping bounty hunter. That's all. He's not ex-military. He's not on her level at all. But it doesn't ruin the movie, because he doesn't have to be. It's just that he's also not a moron who can't find... I don't know how to go on with that. It's just frustrating. It's really frustrating. And I really want you people to stop being like this. And that's what this video is, as long as it is. Let's keep moving. I brought you back to Jackie Brown because of Quentin Tarantino, who's known because he knows how to make a strong female. The Kill Bill, Double Bill, whoa, those are hard to watch at moments too, but those women are not to be trifled with. Not Daryl Hannah, not Uma Thurman herself. I forget the other actress's name. I want to say Vivica Fox, but I could be wrong. You know, and that is because I put Jackie Brown there, even though it doesn't really relate to Kill Bill, although David Carradine being in it does, because he grew up, as I did, on these movies that did exist. He wasn't the first person to go, hey, I think I'll give Pam Grier a gun and try to make an action movie with her. No, they've already existed. He grew up on them and he loved them. And so he went that route. Same with David Carradine. If you were a fan of David Carradine, you had to watch a lot of straight-to-DVD movies. Same way you do now with Jean-Claude Van Damme, Steven Seagal, Dolph Lundgren. A lot of the people you want to see, they're not going to theater. That's part of life. Only a handful of movies go to the theaters. So some of the stuff you want to see isn't going to go to the theater. And the stuff that goes to the theater, it needs to be better than it's been lately. And by lately, I mean like the last 5 or 6 years. Seriously. It's been bad. Hannah, great movie. And even one about a young girl. And that story was so good, it apparently got a TV series. I haven't watched the TV series, so I can't comment on it because I haven't seen it. And again, don't forget foreign films, whether they're French, German, or somewhere from Asia. They're not to be underestimated if that's what you're looking for. And they've been making them forever. The French, almost said Jean Reno, but that's not it. He just likes working with them. Luc Besson, he made La Femme Nikita. It got remade into Point of No Return. Then it got its own series, La Femme Nikita. And then it has another series called Nikita. That's how well done it was, how popular it was. And speaking of series, you got Xena. You got ensemble cast, like all the NCISs, all the CSIs, all the Law and Orders. There's a plethora of them that are overflowing with women characters. Rizzoli and Isles, great one. And MASH. I had to go back again because I wanted to touch on older shows. MASH was a great show, one of the best. I intend to do a couch potato video on that one later. Margaret Houlihan was a character that started out strong as the head nurse, and her character just improves over the entire series. She is fantastic. And if you think it's just one woman in the show of a mostly male cast, you're not entirely wrong, but you would be mistaken and misled to think the nurses were not a huge part of it, and for more than just entertainment for the doctors. They were a large part of it, and they also had diversity amongst the cast as well. Was it always perfect? Was there enough of it? No, to both. I admit that. I agree. It's not that people go, we need more of it. It should have been done better. It is really this argument that it never existed in the first place. And that somehow you have to force an amount. Like somehow MASH, half the doctors should be females. Why? There's no answer to that other than cause. Just cause. And I will admit that occasionally gender and race swapping, at least for me, doesn't bother me. And that's never been more true than in Elementary. One of the reasons for me it didn't bother me is, one, I'm a huge fan of Lucy Liu, so I'll kind of overlook anything just about if it's Lucy Liu. Because she's just phenomenal. Secondly, he did go to New York for a short time in the novel series. And so while that's accurate, this series feels more like a reimagining anyways. And on top of that, there has been so much Sherlock Holmes made. There are TV series, there's a grip of movies, there's been so much of it made that if you decide to change one now, it's like, yeah, sure, there's already like 150 of them. That's fine. Why change a character, again, like Taskmaster, who hasn't even had a chance to be who he's supposed to be? Why are we changing it? And at least for me, that's why Elementary worked. There's so many Sherlock Holmes. Do you want to see regular, normal Sherlock Holmes? Great. There's a ton of it out there. Go watch them. But if you don't mind something slightly different than what you're used to, then we made this change. We moved Sherlock to New York. We made Joan Watson, and we cast Lucy Liu. And it's fantastic. It is really a fantastic show. I love it. Now, I want to move into Westerns. A lot of people raved about that Quick and the Dead, even though it's not a very good movie. You can't argue about the cast. The cast is phenomenal. Even though largely starring people I'm not a huge fan of. But like finally a woman Western. Wrong. Again, as usual. Going back as far as Henny Calder, and there were others. And that's not a musical. It's not a comedy. Angel and the Bad Man is a John Wayne movie, but it's mainly about Gail Russell, her character, and how she's trying to help John Wayne in this movie. It's at least 50-50, if not more, her movie. True Grit, there was, of course, the original. There was the sequel, Rooster Cogburn, with Katharine Hepburn, and Katharine Hepburn don't play second fiddle to nobody. And not because she's an unbearable shrew, because she's freaking awesome, is why. And there's the remake of True Grit. If you've ever seen that, you know the young lady that hires him is the main driving force of the entire movie. And she's not some whiny, teary, sad kid who's just looking for some help. She's a real character. She's a strong character. And she's awesome. And that's actually where I got introduced to Hailee Steinfeld. Been a fan of her ever since. Be Great. Again, Blind Justice. Fantastic Western. Elizabeth Shue, who's always terrific. She's not always in great stuff, but she's always great in whatever she's in. Really does a great job in that movie of holding her own amongst outlaws, soldiers, and just a whole lot. Edge of Tomorrow really should have been a Tom Cruise movie, but you can't deny that Emily Blunt is every bit as important to the movie. Strong character. And this is what I'm getting into. You would call this a men's action movie. So how come Emily Blunt isn't a moron, tripping over herself, going, gee, I sure hope that you can help me because I'm just a girl? No, not by a long shot. Not by a long shot in this movie. So really it's more of a misandry thing when they make a movie like Black Widow or Ghostbusters 2019, where they're like, well, we want these women to be strong, but if they're going to be strong, the men have to look like doofuses. Otherwise, the women just aren't that strong. That's ultimately what they're saying. It's an insult to the men. It's an insult to the women. It's an insult to the actresses. It's an insult to the audience. And it's pathetic that it gets made, and it gets pathetic that people pretend that it's good. Fifth Element. Again, Mia Jovovich, you can write her off because of the outfit she wears at the beginning of the movie, or you can just go along for the ride. Aeon Flux, fantastic action film. Charlize Theron, one of the best. Alita, Battle Angel. There's a reason that beat the socks off of Captain Marvel. And you can try to quote nonsense at me, but you're wrong. The people that spoke up, and you can look this stuff up on IMDb in the comment section, not the critic section, and look it up on Vudu, look it up on Amazon. People raved about this movie. This movie was beloved. This woman, actually not even a woman, a young lady really, cyborg I guess, was phenomenal and beat the pants off of the cardboard cutout, stereotypical, generic, barely even a movie Captain Marvel. And there's a reason for it. If you watch them side by side, I say start with Captain Marvel. If you hate yourself, then watch Alita, because Alita is by far the superior film in every single way. A Ghost in the Shell, that has some haters. I love that movie. Animated sci-fi, Heavy Metal was a very popular one. And again, people wrote it off because it has a couple quick sex scenes, has some nudity. And that's fine. If you don't like it, that's fine. I'm not going to tell you your opinion's wrong there, because it's not. But you are missing out on the whole movie. You're dismissing the entire movie based on content that's not even about the storyline. Which again, yeah, if you removed it, the storyline would be fine in some ways, and in some ways not. The lesser Heavy Metal 2000 is great sci-fi. Good old Michael Ironside playing the world's best bad guy as usual. But this one has a soft spot in my heart because of the late Julie Strain. And just look at that face. I love her to death. When you have women like Scarlett who want to badmouth the character that made them famous, who want to throw dirt at it and undermine it and just be insulting to the audience that made her what she is. And then you got Julie Strain, who revels in her character and her chances, in her opportunities, in who she is in the audience's eye. I respect it, I love it, and I miss her. She was something else. And I really want to drive this home. I'm going to go over some more here in a minute, but since we're in the science fiction, Pitch Black. That is, Vin Diesel is basically testosterone walking, and the whole Riddick series is like the Fast and Furious series, a testosterone ride. So you would think the women would be side characters with nothing to do. But you've got Claudia Black and Radha Mitchell in the first one. Powerful performances, powerful characters. You got the sequel, Chronicles of Riddick, which it has its problems, I suppose. I disagree. I enjoy it. It totally went in a weird direction. But I don't care. I'm along for the ride most times. And I was in that. And again, Jack, all grown up, not Jack anymore. Great character again. And then the fourth Riddick, they go and bring in Batista, amongst other actors. And who do they throw in to balance it out? Katie Sackhoff, because Katie can handle herself. Katie is who you go to when you want something sci-fi, strong female. They don't slough off the female characters in these movies because men are okay with it. They're happy with it. They enjoy it. They love it. It's not men that are causing these problems. And we go all the way back to Alien. I know that one gets run into the ground a lot, but Alien really is the beautiful, perfect movie to drive that point home, because Ripley was very feminine in it. She wasn't a soldier. She wasn't law enforcement by any means. She just kept rising to the occasion and kept pushing harder and harder to survive. And then you have Aliens 2, where she is surrounded by a military group and kind of pushed to the side and quieted, which is something women can probably relate to, being talked over and ignored. I don't think it's nearly what some of you want to think, but I know it happens. It happens to men too. Everybody tries to shut people up when they don't like what they're saying. But Aliens 2 had her pulling this whole maternal, protected woman with Newt. But it didn't undermine her character at all. And the men weren't like... men are why that stupid series has been going on for so long. And women too. But again, the whole conversation is how men don't watch women action films. Or women in action. Men don't like strong women. And I know I made a long video here, but it really deserves the time and effort that I'm putting into it. And hopefully my sound doesn't mess up on me. I guess we'll find out when I post it. Then we got horror and thrillers. Turbulence. Lauren Holly holding her own. And people like to talk about how horror movies are the epitome of misogyny because women are always the victims. They're always just these scantily clad women, which is true. There's a lot of those. But it's also just a generic, ignorant stereotype. Take The Shining, for example. Who survives that movie? The woman does. Nightmare on Elm Street. Who survives? The girl. There were women victims in it, but there were male victims in it too. That's the other reason that argument always gets on my nerves. All these, because of the women victims. They kill plenty of men in those movies too. Okay, I'm not a huge fan of horror in general, but it's always a biased, ignorant argument, which is why you're largely ignored. And again, Halloween. Who survives those movies? Laurie Strode, the woman. Which I'm not knocking at. That is not an insult. Oh, yeah, sure, the woman lives. I'm pointing out that your argument doesn't work. The survival of these movies is the woman. She is faced with unspeakable horror. It's overwhelming. It almost breaks her. But she won't stop. She's as relentless in resisting the demise as the bad guy is relentless in his attempt to destroy her, and she always comes out triumphant. Scream, Sydney survives the whole, and that's a spoiler, I suppose, but you know what? Survives the whole series. Because that's how they're written. Yes, there are women victims. There are also male victims, but the survivor The point of the survivor is the woman. Ocean's 8 is a good drama. When you talk about how women need a bigger piece of the pie and you start neglecting this, you neglect great movies like A League of Their Own. Fantastic film and a true story. River Wild, Meryl Streep, G.I. Jane, Demi Moore, who's always good for these films. The Juror, outstanding film. I want to look at male-centric movies largely to show you the difference between these female movies like Ghostbusters 2015, where every man in it is a buffoon. The same with Loki. Loki was a doofus in his own movie, his own series. The Godfather, largely about Marlon Brando and Al Pacino. But if you watch that movie, you cannot say that Diane Keaton was not instrumental to this film. You can't undermine her role, her performance, or any of it. I forgot to add it to my video, but the same with Rocky. If you undermine Adrian, you undermine the entire franchise. Even Sylvester Stallone knows that. And he's talked about it in depth. Fantasy films where women of a certain group like to really get their knickers in a twist. I'm trying to watch my language. I really am, because again, I don't want to fight with you. I want us to come to an understanding. If anybody watches this far. Conan the Barbarian. Conan, one of the biggest, strongest, most unstoppable forces out there. Not to be undermined by his love interest. She's everything, and she stands toe-to-toe with him against everything. And again, if you go, yeah, but look how she's dressed. Why they got to dress the women like that? I would like you to take, again, a look at what Conan wears. First of all, it's fantasy. In reality, in the Hyborian age, she might not have even actually worn a top. That's just done for you. Which is fine. I don't care either way. But I hate this whole, why is Red Sonja wearing a little silver bikini? Why is Conan only wearing a loincloth? Because it's hot. And because it's fantasy. And because they want to. Shut up and watch the movie. Conan the Destroyer. The sequel to that one. A couple huge, large men in that one. And then you got the young actress that he's protecting there. And I want to point out, this is what you want. This is what you want. You want men who will protect women. Now, I know that you don't think you need protection, and yet constantly you talk about how women are the victims, how women are, and they are. It's a sad, sick truth in this world. There's plenty of men victims that certain group doesn't really care about. But regardless, whether you care or not, I won't deny that women are victims in a sad, ugly world that we live in. So why don't you forget your terminology about toxic masculinity, because it ain't real. Toxicity, toxic behavior exists, and it's exudes by both men and women. What you want are no-nonsense men who are there to protect you against whatever comes your way. Now, if you can lend a hand, if you can stand side by side, like in Conan the Barbarian, great. But not every woman can. And not every man can be Conan, of course. But the fact that men aspire to be, that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. I hate to tell you. Also, that movie even included the diversity with, nope, her name slipped my mind. I didn't write that one down either. I should have. That's my bad. I apologize. But another strong woman in that one. That wasn't his romantic interest. There's not always a romantic interest, which is good. Red Sonja brought about Bridget Nielsen. And again, yeah, she shows some leg and whatnot. So what? The Scorpion King. Now that series ranges in quality from the first one to the sixth one. And they're all semi to rather entertaining, but every single one does not fail to provide strong warrior women to stand with Matthias. It's not a bunch of damsels in distress throughout that series. And just because of the fun of it, here's the Barbarians. An absolutely ridiculous movie. This is not for anybody looking for a serious film. This is 100% only if you want to have a good time. That's all it's for. Nothing more, nothing less. But I wanted to use it to point out this beautiful young lady who you may know from CSI Miami. Yes, that's her. Sitting between these two ginormous brick houses of men. And look at their face. These are happy men. They're not eyeballing her. They're not touching her. They're not nothing. And look at her. Yes, it's a movie. Look at her anyways. Does she look scared? Does she look frightened? Or does she look like she's having a good time? A very happy woman. And I'll tell you why. Because this is not toxic masculinity. These are men that she trusts fully and that are fully trustworthy. And she can be there and not be afraid of them. Because there's no reason, and I'm not talking about muscle here. I'm talking about personality. There is no reason to be afraid of strong men. Weak men are the scary ones. And you need to keep that in mind. Because you keep rooting for movies with weak men in them. Well, weak men are scary. And again, I'm not talking about muscle. I'm not talking about how much they can bench press. Believe me, I can't bench press that much. I wish I looked like one of these guys. And probably not if I had a million years. I'm talking about personality. I'm talking about moral. I'm talking about all of that. My vocabulary is faltering. It's very late. And my video is long. I'm trying to wrap it up for you guys. I'm hoping someone will watch it all the way to the end. Because I think I'm making a valid point. And I'm making it because I want us to all be on the same side. Not because I hate anybody. I want us all to be on the same side. Okay? And I want great female action hero movies. And I want the men in them to not be bumbling morons. They can be comedy relief if they're written well. But just useless? Why? All right, moving on. The Harry Potter franchise. I meant to look up a little bit there too. That one is named after Harry himself. But who did a lot of people consider to be the strongest character? Hermione. And you had Ginny, and you had that other girl who, she had a lot of weird powers. And you had female villains, but Hermione was not a joke. And even though Ron was the comedy relief, he had many good uses. He was a well-written character as well. And I bring us back to Fast and Furious because, again, it is a male-driven series, but the women and the diversity, I do like to keep pointing out the diversity. Everybody wants to talk about, we need more diversity movies, but that group never talks about Fast and Furious, the most diverse series this side of Star Trek. But they ever mention it? No, because it doesn't fit their agenda narrative that they want to drive with everything else. But the women are fantastic in it, and so are the men, and it's a good, fun ride. I mentioned Desperado earlier, and this is where I want to get into male movies. I already talked, and I've already presented a number of female action films. Colombiana, I didn't put up all the posters. There's Salt, Atomic Blonde. There's, we're an hour in, and I haven't scratched the surface. I want to focus, like I was just bringing up in The Barbarians, men action films. And again, we're going back. So these are all movies led by men. And what kind of representation do we have of women? And why must you knock them being supportive characters? Supporting characters are extremely important. Supporting characters can make or break a movie. So you got RoboCop. And are you going to tell me that in RoboCop, Nancy Allen as Lewis wasn't important to this film? That she may not have been RoboCop herself. She didn't need to be. She didn't need to be in the reboot either. But you can't knock her character. You got the Terminator series, and you get upset that men hated it because they don't like strong women. Are you kidding me? Are you seriously going to come after the first Terminator, but especially after the second Terminator, where we rooted for Sarah Connor, easily one of the strongest in every way possible female characters ever written, made it one of the biggest action movies ever. This was supposed to be Arnold's movie, but in many ways, she stole this film. She was so great in this movie. So again, maybe when Dark Fate comes out and people are like, that's garbage, maybe there really is something to that opinion. And you are the one that should give it more thought, not dismiss it, not tell us that we're dismissing the movie. Like, yeah, why don't they like this one compared to the ones that they have rooted for? That's harder to do with a unique and original movie. I can admit that. But not when it's a sequel. When it's a sequel, there's a reason people hate it. And there's a reason people hated Dark Fate. And it wasn't because there was a woman in it. Total Recall is a great example. You got Sharon Stone as Laurie, and then you've got Melina. Strong characters. And then in the reboot, which actually was pretty darn decent, you got Kate Beckinsale and Jessica Biel reprising those roles. These are great female actresses and holding their own against Arnold and Colin Farrell. I will admit I'm a little disappointed though in Kate Beckinsale. Her new movie Jolt got that unnecessary Charlie's Angels feminist nonsense in it, and I was so excited for her to be wielding a gun and kicking butt again, and yet it's just got to beat you over the head with that agenda nonsense. You got Commando, easily one of the biggest, most testosterone-fueled movies ever, and you've got females in that. His daughter, who isn't that strong, nor should she be, that he's trying to protect, and then you've got Rae Dawn Chong, who is just a regular old female, but she's not a pushover at all. After he kidnaps her because he needs her car, she flat out, this giant man is in her car, and she just flat out lays into him. I've only known you 5 minutes, and I want you dead too. She has no qualms. That alone right there was a strong character, and yet as she sees the mission he's on, she comes to care about him, not in a romantic way, and she winds up helping save him. So in men-focused action movies, women are not relegated to useless roles, as much as you'd like to pretend they are, because they're not the stars of the film. They are integral to the film, and that should mean something to you. Die Hard, another one. And yet, you're going to say that Holly wasn't important. Holly, really? When she actually went face-to-face with the terrorist himself and dealt with them, every moment, everything that happened, every positive step they took was because of her, versus how Ellis tried handling things. That was a fantastic character. Escape from New York was the first one that popped into my head, because again, all you think of is Snake Plissken, this unstoppable, gives no about anything, and yet Adrienne Barbeau, again, back from the 70s also, maybe even before, she was a beloved actress, and yet she's not just eye candy in this movie. It's an insult to call her that. She's a terrific character. Now, I'll meet you halfway. I'm picking a few here or there. Rambo. There's one woman in the entire movie, and she's at the very beginning. A beautiful scene. Emotional, intricate scene. But not every movie has to have women in it. I'll just flat out say that. But take Rambo 2, for instance. Rambo 2 has, I actually don't know how to pronounce her name, but she's in this film. She's his contact in the jungle, and he goes and meets up with her. Her appearance and her character add a softness to this movie, and she also becomes intricate in rescuing him once he's captured and tortured. I want you to see the difference between these female-led movies nowadays, how they were and how the men ones were. Transporter 2, the main villain is, not the main villain, but one of the villain that gives them the most trouble is a female. Now the new Time to Die is coming out, and it looks like absolute garbage. It's insulting to the franchise. It's insulting to the character, which is fine. Daniel Craig never cared about this anyways. He really should have retired, but he seems willing to drive it into the ground. This series used to be fun, believe it or not, as far back as Sean Connery starred in it. And if you really believe two things. One, that the women were just eye candy and objects for him to use, you've never watched them. That you simply haven't watched them, or else I really have to say something insulting about your intelligence if that's what you got from them. Because there was true sometimes, but a lot of the women were just as dangerous as James himself, and a lot of them are what got him into trouble he got into. Also, quit attributing good qualities to James Bond. James Bond is not, quote unquote, a good guy. He literally cannot commit murder. His license to kill means everybody he kills is legal. He can't be tried for any of it. His mission is all that matters, and anything, male or female, object or not, that gets in his way is collateral damage, because that's the job he has. So quit trying to turn him into Captain America while you're in the middle of destroying Captain America. These movies used to be a blast. They haven't been since Pierce Brosnan's last one. And there's Michelle Yeoh again. And The World Is Not Enough was probably the last good one. I did like Casino Royale, but since it counts as a prequel, I still say The World Is Not Enough was the last good one. Unfortunately, I didn't like that last Pierce Brosnan movie. But anyway, The World Is Not Enough. Sophia Marceau, great franchise. Great women in these movies, if you're paying attention to them. Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. You can't call Marion a weak character. She wasn't even supposed to be, I mean, the character was supposed to be in it, but, and the actress and everything, but as far as the story goes, she wasn't part of his journey. She inserts himself into it when things go sideways, and she holds her own most of the time. She's not a soft, stupid, useless character. Now, you might argue that in Temple of Doom, Willie was, but again, this is called variety. She's a different character, different actress, different everything. You got The Last Crusade that then has Elsa, who has you at first thinking she's just an average dame, and then as things unravel, you find out, nope, she has completely manipulated both father and son and is way more than anybody ever assumed she was. And that is a great trope that they used for that film. And they even brought Marion back in the fourth film, which the less said about that movie, the better. However, one thing they did not do was ruin Marion's character. She stayed true to her character, which is more than you can say for what they've done to Luke Skywalker, and I'm sure they're going to do to others, according to rumors, in upcoming movies. Sin City, all around a great movie. Mask of Zorro. Now, I'm going to ease us into superheroes. That's why I did Sin City there, and why I'm doing Mask of Zorro, because that's how this is coming about. Because whether you like it or not, whether I like it or not, it seems like superhero movies are going to be around at least for another few years. And that's where a lot of the problems are coming from, because they just stink lately. The Mask of Zorro, he more or less is a superhero. Come on, he wears a mask, he fights the bad guy, saves the day. That's superhero material. And of course, Catherine Zeta-Jones as Elena was not to be trifled with. She was his equal in many ways. So while they continue to drop the ball with garbage like Birds of Prey and here, Catwoman, which of course that's much older. And again, we're not going to knock all female movies here. Men have made some pretty bad ones. Batman Forever, Batman and Robin. There's more. I don't care. But, you know, again, well, I'm only not addressing those because it's not what the topic of the film is. But yes, there's been plenty of really bad male-led movies. So the point is that, and again, you can't say it's because people don't find her attractive. I know that some of the insult that Brie Larson wasn't sexy enough. Come on, everybody on the planet thinks Halle Berry is sexy. That did not save Catwoman, because it just wasn't a good movie. Unfortunately, it didn't save Elektra either. To kind of get ahead of myself a little bit there. You had the old Wonder Woman before them, and that paved the road. You had the original Supergirl movie. And as far as that goes, the CW Supergirl show was good for one season. They kind of messed up Jimmy, but aside from that, the first season was actually really well done. It is after that it continued to get worse every single season until it's intolerable now. And again, look at foreign films. You got Michelle Yeoh again as Silverhawk. And which might have just been a creative one. You got B-grade stuff like Black Scorpion, which is a guilty pleasure for me. I can't recommend this to anybody in and of itself, but I enjoy the heck out of them. Daredevil has the people in the middle of the road. It's very divisive. I actually really liked it. And he had a great side with Elektra, which again is the opposite of Black Widow and Red Guardian. There was no respect for that character at all. And yet in Daredevil, Elektra had all the respect, which she deserved. I was glad to see it. I'm not complaining that she was well done. I'm illustrating that this is a one-sided problem. Unfortunately, she had her own movie that was really bad. But then the TV series Daredevil came out, which for the most part wasn't too bad, and they did a great job with Elektra. Would have liked her outfit to be more comic accurate, but still, the performance was great. And as far as superheroes go, these CW shows and stuff, yeah, I liked it better when Flash looked like a man. And that's not a knock against the actor in the new show. He's actually extremely likable, and I did enjoy a couple seasons of it, but he does look like he's in middle school, and you want your superheroes to look like men and women. You just do. You have your original Batman, which sometimes gets knocked for how much Vicky Vale screamed when this or that happened. But, try getting thrown off a building and see if you don't scream about it. But she was relentless. She was unstoppable. And she hung with him the whole time. It was pretty much well done. Batman Returns. No, that's the Catwoman everybody knows and loves. It was so much better than Halle Berry's and infinitely better than whatever Dark Knight Rises was supposed to be. And you got Batman vs. Superman, which again, divisive film, even the director's cut. And you've got, Batman and Superman. And who steals the show? Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman was written so well, so exciting, and made such an instance. She stole the show and then got her own movie. And was one of the better parts of Justice League. And as much as I knock Deadpool 2, you have to admit that Negasonic and Domino were well done in his movie. They were very well done. In The Wolverine, Yukio and Viper, really well done characters. Dick Tracy, I like to go back to older films. Oh, and I have to back up to Logan real quick there. And this movie gets a little bit more love than I think it deserves, but you had to love X-23. That young lady knocked it out of the park, and it was fantastic. You've got Judge Dredd and his supporting character, Judge Hershey, essential to the plot. Then you've got the other one, Dredd, and you've got Judge Anderson, Olivia. She really knocked out all the park. She was fantastic. And then, of course, Mama, who was, that was a villain if ever there was one. My point is, these are male-centric movies where the women are given the utmost respect. Why can't it be done the other way unless it's bad writing, it's agenda-driven, and there's a reason we hate them, and you need to open your eyes to it because it's an insult to you too. And for that matter, what you need to do is go back to the 80s and 90s and watch those movies because they're better than anything coming out. You've got Dick Tracy, which has Madonna as Breathless in her best role since A League of Their Own, as well as the love interest Tess, who... she doesn't do a whole lot, and yet she's very important to the series, the movie, rather. The Rocketeer, which again, love interest, but when it's Jennifer Connelly playing Jenny, there's no complaints. And again, if you can look at this picture and say, that's not what I need in my movies, I don't think you and I have anything to talk about. I really don't. It's a beautiful thing. It's a wonderful thing. And I don't need romance in every single movie. But a love interest is not something to knock. It's something to root for. The Phantom was another one that was a lot of fun. Christy Swanson plays Diana Palmer in it. And then Catherine Zeta-Jones is in it as well with her squadron of female bodyguard, assassin type characters. So it was extremely feminine heavy. The Shadow, which has Penelope Ann Miller as Margot Lane. And I couldn't help but think of it when I put this picture up. Ladies, some of you, anyways, you get all upset when anybody talks about modesty, like how dare they? And I'm not saying that she should put more on. She's lovely in that dress. No, I want to talk about men. Modesty applies to men as well as women. Are you going to tell me, looking at Alec Baldwin there, that you wouldn't like to see men dressed like that a little more often? Now, no, you're not going to wear a tuxedo to the theater or to go to Walmart or Arby's. I get that. But don't you think that we've really gone the wrong direction in both men and women's clothing? Again, if you don't, you're wrong. And no, it's not your opinion. You're actually wrong. And now I've probably, I'm never going to have a very big channel because of that, but that's okay. I am who I am. And I'm in it a little bit with Barbed Wire, who again, she gets knocked for, well, being Pamela Anderson, although she does a really good job in this movie. Again, make notice, I'm not saying great. It's not award worthy, but she does a really solid job. And I use this picture here because in a lot of pictures people like to use to advertise it, they like to use the pictures where she is rocking a lot of cleavage because that's kind of Pamela Anderson's thing. But no, pay attention to this picture and note that she covers up when she takes on her action roles. And she uses her wonderful femininity to manipulate people and to get a heads up, because that is something women have that men just don't. And I do recommend Barbed Wire to everybody. I have another video on that. I've been meaning to do a second one. And I'm going to end it with Superman, because in a lot of ways, Superman started it. Back in the comics, back in the cartoons, back in the serials. He really started it all. And they started it with a strong female companion in Lois Lane. She did get captured on occasion, but it never stopped her, did it? It never made her stop doing what she did, which was be a reporter and dig up the things that people needed to know. Something that is recommended even today. It's very, very nice when somebody takes that on them. And there's been many variations, and Lois has always been a strong, great character, because a strong man needs a strong woman. And in reality, a strong woman needs a strong man. A truly strong woman doesn't want some weak dude. And again, we're not talking about muscles. We're not talking about arm size here. We're talking about personality, soul, morals, drive. They don't want weak men. So why do they keep putting it in your movies? Because of an agenda that has been talked about by people smarter than me, that express themselves better than me. This is strictly about the movie. So that's it. I know this was a long one. It was a really long one. And believe it or not, I could have made it 3 hours. I just didn't have the heart and the time. And I've only barely scratched the surface. There's plenty of women action movies that are very much loved by the male audience. So when you see them and they're not, there's a reason. There really is. Now, what's going to come up next? Are they going to keep making terrible female-led heroes movies and blame men? I don't know. Are they going to figure it out and start making the kind of movies that rational, stable men and women want to see and enjoy? I don't know. I hope so. But I don't have my hopes up. I really don't. Shang-Chi, maybe. The Eternals, not likely. And everything about a lot of the announcements don't give me hope. So that's it. I'm not going to end this with my usual quip that's at the end of my reviews, because I don't want sycophantic head nodding. I really want a conversation. Tell me what you think, if I helped at all, because that's really what I wanted to do. I didn't want to fight. I wanted to help. I want you to see that there have been men, directors, writers, and women. There's women that have been writing and directing at least TV shows and such for the longest time, that they have been being made for as long as the industry has existed, and they will continue to be. And men aren't trying to stop that. They're just asking that they be good when they do. Anyways, thank